Hi, Charles. What do you think about Tether? They are back at it again. You know, it's one of those matters of will Tether go legit or not? So there's no reality that something at that size, scale, and liquidity can stay in a gray area forever, given that it is a centralized asset. Guys, it's not a dig on Tether, but you have to understand the only reason Tether is worth something is because a centralized company asserts that every unit that has been issued of this Tether asset is linked somehow, some way, to an equivalent amount of value, $1 worth of value sitting in a bank account. That makes them basically a faith-based entity. The whole point of cryptocurrencies is to not be faith-based. Your Ada is not backed by a promise from Charles Hoskinson or any entity for that matter. It is Ada. Just like Bitcoin isn't backed by some consortium or something like that. It's just Bitcoin. Okay, that's a real cryptocurrency. When you move to asset-backed tokens like Tether, then you have a situation of how do you know that the asset is really there and the promises and commitments and representations are really true. This is exactly why regulation exists. It's say, well, you can say it, but we're going to make sure you cross those T's and dot those I's because the temptation is so great not to. Small perturbations with that can result in all kinds of bizarre market dynamics. And with that kind of liquidity in trading, you could imagine millions to tens of millions of dollars being made or lost every day just based upon small perturbations if things aren't completely honest. And I don't know the people who run that. They're in very different circles than I am. And they've been around the cryptocurrency space as long as I have. And they have many products and things that they've done. And there is evidence that that peg, that complete dollar backing has been broken a few times historically. Now, it's not necessarily a problem if there's someone to make that whole and solvent, but it is a problem in that there's a breach of trust. You say, I have X, and for every unit X, $1 exists in a bank account, and then suddenly $1 turns into $1 equivalent, and then less than $1 with an IOU, at what point have you broken the law, or you've broken faith, or you've committed fraud? That's a problem. And the issue is that is one of the most important pieces of trading infrastructure and liquidity for the entire ecosystem. It's kind of like Lehman Brothers and AIG and all these other things in 2008. There's these transitive relationships and trading relationships where if just a few of these key entities were to fail, in isolation, that's okay, but in aggregate, it would cause a cascading failure in the marketplace. And that's the concern with Tether, is that there will be a cascading, exponentially increasing failure as a consequence of that asset being brought into a bad state. And likely that bad state would be a regulatory event where the regulator would shut the asset down, freeze the bank accounts and remove the peg and arrest the actors behind it. Now, because of its scale and prominence, it's very unlikely that the federal government would do that, U.S. federal government. Instead, they would probably try to arrange some form of a shotgun wedding, kind of like Circle and Poloniex, to clean up the mess, to avoid a market failure. So will they go from gray to white and become a regulated entity and make U.S. regulators happy, or somehow offshore to a point where Tether doesn't have U.S. exposure? But it's not clear to me with a digital asset like that how you would avoid such things. So it's a complicated issue, and it's one that a lot of people seem to have a lot of concerns about. And if Tether was to collapse, it would definitely result in a major regulatory series of changes in the cryptocurrency space, much akin to when Enron collapsed. It led to Sarbanes-Oxley. And so, yeah, we'll watch it. If I know something, I'll tell you guys. But right now, your guess is as good as mine. I'm on the outside of that like you guys are.